We're looking today at the British budget and seeing what could come up. And the usual level of incompetence has actually already come up. We've previewed in our webinars over the last few weeks what could happen and the impact on expats which have got assets in the UK. So if you're living and working abroad, you haven't necessarily got any income in the UK unless it's a fixed income, which is property rentals, or a fixed capital gain on any property or investment asset based in the UK, including your companies. That doesn't at the moment include your dividends, so you can be abroad and receive zero dividends, 0% tax and dividends, for example, in Cyprus if you're a tax resident. So do you move your individual? Do you move your company? How do you plan to avoid that tax? And of course, the big changes with non-doms last year that affect expats living and working in the UK. So what happens when it goes out? So the things we're looking at today are we want to get a hold of dividends, capital gains, national insurance, interest. I think we should look at thresholds as well. Sorry, you can't see that. I should have checked my pen. So we're looking at the different things and that could come in there. So the budget should get underway now, and we'll try and provide a live commentary on that for you. I'm sorry that my marker board isn't going to help us much today. So what we know is that the government have got two objectives with this thing, to tax and to spend. But they also, the British government have got record levels of borrowing at the moment, and that is something that they can't move away from. And the issue that they've got is when they borrow money, if they freak the money markets, then their borrowing rates go up, and then that's no good for them because they've got to pay more interest. That makes them more in debt. So what they're looking to do is try and be fiscally responsible. So what they want is inflation goes up, therefore salaries goes up, everything goes up in price. So they get more VAT, they get more income tax, they get more everything. So inflation is actually good for a left-leaning tax and spend type of government. So we have to look at it from that perspective. If they freeze the bands, that's another way of getting the tax creep where people enter into higher and higher tax bands as time progresses. In the 1990s, with the 40% tax band, there was something like 7% of people paid higher rate taxes. In 2024, 14% of people pay higher tax bands. So we wonder, we consider, would there just be a tax creep and a stealth for to allow tax creep to add in to all the different budgetary requirements. For example, at the moment, we've got dividends on 8.75% up to 39.35%. We've got capital gains tax at 18 and 24%. And we've got national insurance at 15% for the employer, with potentially an extra 2%. And then we've got up to 10% for an employee. So the national insurance is 25% of payroll. So it is really a tax on jobs. So an increase in national insurance is going to affect employees and employment. So let's have a look at the first thing, what the budget's going on. I'm actually watching it as we come along, and I'm hoping to get some updates as she makes the announcement that she will make. Okay. What we don't know is the precise details of it. Will she simplify tax? They've defined their clientele of people on working people as people earning below around about £45,000. I like round figures, so it's actually 46. And whenever I say a figure, I'm using a round figure rather than a precise amount. So anybody above that, £46,000, is deemed to be wealthy in terms of income. So what we're looking for is that's everybody earning on a high rate tax band, and everybody earning over £50,000 in the UK each year is a high rate taxpayer. So in effect, they're after anybody that over 40%. So will they increase that personal rate band? Will they try to reduce the confusion with the higher rate tax bands going between 40 and 45? It's graduated from 40 to 45 between 100 and 125. Why not just make it 45% from 100,000? So that's what we're waiting to see there. Okay. What we've seen so far, and in the usual gaff-like manner, is it a gaff from the government when they actually release the budget report before the budget instead of after it? Is that really a release, or is that just a state of the political chaos in the UK, where you've got an extreme far left government on the one hand, and then an organisation and people that are completely committed against it? So it's not unexpected that a leak comes out at some point. But what we know is that they're going to extend the freeze the thresholds of the personal allowances for people and the tax thresholds for an additional 3 years. Now, in the Halloween budget of 24, they said they wouldn't extend them beyond the current period of 28. This is what the last lot of government in the UK did. So now they're going to freeze those thresholds for another 3 years. What that does for the um, uh, money markets, that gives them reassurance that they can then project that they're going to get more tax revenue as inflation goes up, takes more people into 40% tax. So um, the working people earning below 46,000 will just about get up to the 50,000 and still be basic rate taxpayers over this period before the next election. So that 3 year freeze on incomes means that you need to consider limiting your income in the UK. Now, if you're an expat, what type of incomes are being taxed? Property rental income is fixed in the UK, but if you're a contractor working abroad, then you can, as an individual, you can draw that income from abroad. If you've got a holding company or family business or family trust, then that income can be taxed abroad. If you've got a property rental abroad, again, it's going to be taxed in the country where that property is, but it'll still be adding up into your UK taxable income as well. Um, so a very clear point about to work out what your income is. So if you're in the UK, they're going to tax your worldwide income. If you're non-resident and you're not living in the UK, they're not going to tax your worldwide income. But what they will do is tax any fixed income in the UK. And what we know that is property rental income. So how can you mitigate that? It's already tax trapped, really. Stamp duty is an expense for moving that, um, and capital gains tax on the sale of the property is another tax you'll get as well. So, as an expat with a property rental portfolio in the UK, you're probably going to have to take this as a hit. Now, the question is that if you're an expat with a property rental portfolio in the UK, you can pay income tax. Now, the thresholds are frozen. So that means that if your property rental income goes over £12,000, £12,500, then you starting to go into basic rate taxes. Now, if you've got a property rental portfolio and you're an expat, that is going to quickly drag those people in. Um, Freezing the thresholds will get more and more property rental, the people that rented their property back in the UK into an income tax situation. Now, what if the British government introduced an additional tax for property rental income? So at the moment, dividends are all your income is mushed together in one bunch. But if you've got your property rental income, they could actually make a law to say, well, we're going to isolate property rental income and tax it differently. So when you buy a property, you've got a capital gains, a stamp duty to pay to buy the tax. And then when you sell the property, you've got a capital gains tax to pay when you sell the property. And you've got a property rental income to pay when you receive the income. But what about if they put an additional income tax rate on that property rental income, a type of wealth tax? And it's a start of the way for that to go. So potential that we could see a 2% increase in property rental income to isolate it from your income, from your basic rate tax. So if you've got a 30,000 salary and then an additional uh, 20,000 property rental income, you would normally still be a basic rate taxpayer. But if your property rental income is given an extra 2% tax, irrespective, then you're going to pay 22% on that property rental income as an investment income for a wealthy person, as opposed to an earned income for an unwealthy person. So that would also count. For example, if you've got a state pension, and generally that stays below the personal allowance, and so it's income tax free. But if you've got a rental income on top of that, below the 50,000 a year, up until now it's been a basic rate tax. But if you add a 2% addition to that to tax property rental income, that's an additional way to charge people 22%, but not working people, people who've got property that is an investment income. That would especially affect people like expats living and working abroad, because all their rental income is then going to be taxed in the UK. There's even a possibility that an expat could have removed their property rental income, the personal allowance from overseas if they're living overseas. So we'll have to wait and see if that comes up. What about dividends? Dividends are taxed on where you're individually tax resident. So if you're living and working abroad, then you're paying dividends at a tax rate where you're a tax resident. So if you're living in a country with a double taxation treaty with the UK, that's where you're going to pay your tax. Okay, so if your dividends at the moment, you've got a bit of a mishmash, so it's very easy to simplify it because it's 8.75, 33.75, 39.35. So you could easily just merge it in with the existing income tax rates of 20, 40 and 45. But another way around it might be to just balance it off and maybe make it 10% and 40% and 45%. And that will be different types of increases for different rates of income. But even so, we're expecting to have confirmed a 2% rise in dividends. So if you're a contractor, if you built up your own business as a personal service company, and you're getting a lot, you're getting a large amount of you're getting a large amount of income from your personal service contract, then those dividends now could be increasing. So they're going from a basic rate of um, 8.75% on dividends. They could go up by 2%. Um, but if your personal allowance taken off that, then it could increase it to even more. So we want to wait and see what that is, but expect dividends to increase. If you want to pay no dividend tax, you've got to restructure the way you earn your income in the UK, and that's fairly easy because one of the ways that you could do that is to um, take away the personal allowance from dividend income, so make it a special tax. If you did that for dividends, you could do it for savings as well. So at the moment, savings income is taxed on the taxable individual. So if your company or your family trust or your individually earn the income, the interest on investment income, then you pay that tax in the country where you're tax resident. And in Cyprus, that is nil, zero tax for dividends, zero tax for interest. But again, they could take away the personal allowance in the UK, and they could add this 2% tax on top of that. So you're going to pay 2% above the basic rate, even though you're a basic rate taxpayer. So we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years, after those 3 or 4 budgets, the personal allowances on dividends and interest be dramatically reduced right down. And now, with no room to drop it any further, the simplification is to increase the rate by 2%. What we're looking for, what we've seen in the reports, is that there's going to be between 25 and 30 billion pound of tax rises in this budget, aimed at the wealthy. On the other hand, the benefits are going to be increased. So the benefits are to pay off and appease the Labour supporters. Now, the Labour supporters earning under £46,000, that could be quite a good salary, thank you very much. But if you're living and working abroad, it's going to disproportionately affect you unless you make the right moves and you plan and organise your assets properly. So if you want to relocate and take those steps, you can do that from scratch. But even if you're already abroad, you might need to change the arrangements, because benefits rising in the UK is not going to affect an expat. So child benefit, welfare benefits aren't paid to people living and working abroad. So all the tax rises are not aimed up against people already on benefits in the UK or people that are working in the UK. It's going to affect people that are living and working abroad or have got fixed income from property rentals, for example. Let's consider national insurance. National insurance rates are already very high. Don't forget, it's 25% of an employer's payroll. If they're paying you £100, 25% is the cost of the national insurance that either the employee or the employer is paying. So we don't think that's going to go up this time. But again, if you're working from a UK company and paying national insurance in the UK, it is still a big tax. If you're an expat, you can't. The only benefit you can get is a state pension. It may be well worth saving into that, and you can make those voluntary national insurance contributions. But again, if you're working remotely as a digital nomad, you can pay tax and national insurance in the country in which you're a tax resident. For more know-how on that, you can contact us at ProACTPartnership.com. Capital gains taxes were introduced in 1960, and they gradually crept up and up and up. And in the Halloween budget of 24, capital gains tax jumped up from 10 to 18%. And what we saw then was that we got this massive increase in capital gains and flight of capital out of the UK. Whenever a new tax is introduced, it's introduced stealthily. It's not going to affect very many people, but then it's used to develop and become a major tax later on. So now, with minimal personal allowances affecting all your investments and savings, capital gains taxes affect very many people that have built up their own business or they've invested in investments in the UK. The mansion tax is going to come in, and it's going to be a reoccurring tax from April 28, chargeable on anybody who owns a property over £2 million. £2 million in London is not a mansion, could be a terraced house, but this is what they decided to introduce. But it will catch on. It will catch on and it will spread. We don't think they're going to reduce the council tax or the stamp duty. They're going to leave those in place already. But the mansion tax will be a reoccurring annual tax that you'll need to pay. And you might get a concession, not have to pay it until you sell the property. But at the moment, if it is your personal private residence, that is tax free at the moment, and there's no capital gains tax on it. So by introducing the mansion tax on your personal private residence that you pay when you sell the property in 10 years' time, it's capital gains tax by another way. And it's great scope for any government to increase that by stealth going forward. In 1979, stamp duty was £675 million, and it was paid by 600,000 people. In 2024, 1 million people paid stamp duty at £11.6 billion of tax revenue. So it's gone up massively. The allowances have gone down over the years. And with the mansion tax and the stamp duty, it's going to depress a property market. So for our generation, people have invested in property thinking that that's a good way to make money. And your parents may have done that. They may not, but they may have done. But there's an increasing number of people under 35 that are struggling even to save for their first deposit to buy a house, as estates are taxed and people are taxed out of existence. So, for example, to stop people saving and taking money out of a tax-free investment, the ISA, if you stay in the UK, you can put money into an ISA. They used to be able to put 20,000 in. It's going to be 8,000 going forward. Okay, and that's just a way of keeping more money in the future in a tax regime in the UK. It's interesting. If you do raise an extra £30 billion in taxes, who is going to pay that? Another interesting scenario, another interesting point for people to consider is that 1% of the people in Britain pay 25% of the taxes. So even if you just scare off that top 1%, you lose 25% of your revenue. So by constantly increasing the tax, by letting tax creep up and up and up and spread over more people, then you're going to force out the people. The people at the top are going to go first. And yes, you can argue that if you give more benefits to people that are not working, they'll spend that locally. But also you could argue that if you don't tax them as much, they'll spend that locally as well. So in saving, it used to be a prudent way forward. You used to be able to put a lot of money into an ISA, which was not tax-free when you put it in, but it was tax-free growth. So they're radically being reduced now so that less people can put money away. We expect probably as well with pensions. So at the moment, you can put quite a lot of money in pensions each year and get a tax credit on that money that's going into a pension. Now, I think that's going to be radically reduced this year as well, so that you won't be able to put in as much and get tax relief on the money going into a pension. So a pension, Halloween budget, national insurance was added. So after a contract to build up your pension pot, get taxable income while you're retired, and then hand it over to your family. That's all going to stop. That's all stopping. But now there's a potential not only that they can increase the amount of inheritance tax you can charge in your pension fund when you retire. They're also going to take the money and stop you putting so much money in. So the tax-free fund that's sitting there for years and years before they can get any taxable income from you is going to be reduced down. Now, one of our scares was if they would introduce for expats that they can't transport the pension abroad. So at the moment, if you've got a government service pension, it's always going to be taxed in the UK. Um, so we if you've got a public service pension and you go and live and work abroad, even in a country which is paying little or no income tax on pensions, you're still going to pay that tax back in the UK. At the moment, and we haven't heard anything to suggest that they're going to change it, then we're going to get a situation whereby we think that potentially they're going to change the rules and stop you taking that pension abroad. So reduce the amount you can put in, but those that have already built up their pot, stop them getting it taxed in another country with a double taxation treaty. Be interested to see if they do that. But for more information guidance, contact us at proactpartnership.com. The budget is just still going on. We're going to take a break now, and we're going to come back in a few minutes as the budget ends, and then we'll go through and we'll do some recaps and some summaries on the actual impact on expats. So join us again, the Living and Working Abroad show on YouTube later on after the budget. Thanks a lot for listening. We'll see you next time.